All right, for this example, we're going to do a data-driven locator. In this case, we have a simple test here that is just navigating to the site, choosing a bicycle and adding it to the cart and going back home. Something nice and simple. And what we want to do is take this piece and make this data-driven to allow somebody to pass information in here to use. So in the case of this, the bicycles, the home, and all that stuff, these are the things we want to transfer into a function. It's not a requirement. We're just going to do this for this test just to make this a little simpler to work on. So we'll call that, do a convert to function, and this is data-driven function, we'll call it. Now we replace this with our call statement. We're going to go back to our function, and here we want to specify in the function what data that we want to pass in. To discover the data that we want to pass in, we first have to go and look at the locator, the thing that was found when we did our records. We'll pop that open, and it'll show us we have a bunch of different locators here that are we can choose from. What we're looking for is things that make the different, in this case, bicycles identifiable. After some research and looking kind of up and down this list, we found that the product is selected here. That gives us something that's selectable, as well as, I believe, the title of the bicycle. In most cases, you want to get as many different options to look up your element as possible, so that's why we have these tiered lookup lists. But in the instance that you're trying to do something data-driven, you may not be able to have as many different elements. So for this one, we're actually just going to take this whole entire piece, and we'll select all that. We'll change this back to an XPath, paste that back in up here, and we know that this product is what we want to switch out. So what we're going to put here is a context variable. This is a variable that we can use, that any test can pass in here. So we'll call our context variable bike. So now we replace that with the context variable that's inside. We are now going to go back to our test, or our function here. And in the function, we are going to pass in this context variable for people to use. So we're going to add a new argument here. We'll call it bike. It's of type string, which is perfectly fine. That tells us that it's going to have a value here. We're also going to go back to the site, and we're going to rename this, because now this isn't for a single one. This is for as many as we like. So we'll call that bike. Okay, go back to our function. You see that'll update. So that's all ready to go. When we call our function now, as we see here, we have the ability to paste the bike in. So just to start, we're going to put one in as just a base value that we want to try. Now when we go to execute, it's going to do that variable replacement as it does here. So there we go. In this case, it chose whatever model Y was. That was the bicycle that we pasted in. And we can see in our cart that we have a model Y in there. Now let's say we wanted to try the model X or we'll do a model Z. All we're doing is changing a bit of data. It's doing its execution, choosing the model Z that time, as you can see there. And now in our cart, that's what we have. So now we want to be able to take something like this, and we want to repeat. We want to be able to loop over it so we can add all these to the cart. So I went ahead and created some basic data. All this data has is a product, essentially. That's really what we're looking at. So here, if you click on it, static data, it has a list of the products that we have, K, X, Y, and Z. What we want to do now is go back to our test, and rather than just doing a function call here, we're going to go ahead and disable this, and instead we are going to add a repeat. So we're going to go to our actions toolbox, we're going to find the repeat keyword, and now we want to specify how we're going to repeat. So we go into here, we look at fixed count, change that to data, click back up here. Our data table name is the data that we've defined, I just showed you here a moment ago, which is the selection table. So we take that and grab that in the data table. And our function name is, again, our data-driven function, which we have here. But now, rather than passing in data to this one, this function no longer actually takes a parameter. Whenever you're looping over data, the data is kind of there inherently, so you don't have to pass anything to it. We can leave this bicycle parameter there, but inside of the function, we're really not going to use it. The site is going to reference that piece of data now. So we go back to our the bicycle link that we had defined before, and rather than bike, we want to replace this with our data value. Come over to data. We said it was product. We'll copy that. Come here where we had defined this as bike. We're going to replace that with the replacement for the product. We'll save this off. Go back to our test. And now let's do an execution. If this works, this should add all 4 bikes to our Bob shopping cart. So that was the K. The K is in there. That's the X. The X is in there. There's our Y. And there's our Z. So that are the proper steps on how to do data driving when you're looping over or working with locators.